What's up, guys? Today on Sports Spectrum, we have a great conversation coming up with Jerricho Cotchery, the longtime NFL wide receiver. He was drafted by the New York Jets in 2004, played 7 seasons with the Jets. So those New York Jet fans certainly remember Jerricho Cotchery. Went to Pittsburgh for a couple years under Mike Tomlin, and then finished out his career catching passes from Cam Newton. And especially that 2015 season, his final season, the Panthers went 15-1. Made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Jerricho Cotchery was a big part of that team. And then his football career was done and he went into coaching. And he coached in the NFL for a little bit with the Panthers. Now he's coaching at Limestone University. He was an assistant there under Mike Furrey for a few years. And on February 29th, he was named the head coach at Limestone University. So a new venture for Jerricho Cotchery, his first head coaching job at Division II Limestone University. But this conversation is really focused on Jerricho Cotchery, the man of God. We do talk about his football career as well and catching passes from Brett Favre and playing under Mike Tomlin. But even more, we want to talk about faith. We want to talk about Jesus at the center of Jerricho Cotchery's life. And a big part of that is his story of adoption as well. This is Jerricho Cotchery. It's coming up in just a second here on Sports Spectrum. First, I want to tell you about our friends at Water Mission. Man, I cannot tell you how great Water Mission is. You need to go to the website, watermission.org/join the team, and understand a little bit more about this ministry, bringing clean water, safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions to developing countries and disaster areas. It's Christian-focused, Christian-based, and they are making a difference all around the world. You can learn more by going to watermission.org/join the team. My wife, myself, my daughter, we partner with Water Mission because we believe in that mission that they stand for. Obviously, it's a clean water and safe sanitation, but also doing it with Christ at the center. Check out watermission.org/join the team to learn more about the great work they are doing with Water Mission. Great to have Jerricho Cotchery, the longtime NFL wide receiver. He's now coaching at Limestone University. Jerricho Cotchery, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's good to talk to you. This will be a fun conversation. I remember when you played and kind of following your NFL career. Now to watch you doing your coaching thing is a lot of fun. But let's start with faith. Let's start with Christ. Who is Jesus in the life of Jerricho Cotchery?
Well, Jesus is King. He is God the Son. He was the one that was sent into the world to save sinners. He is the one that lived a perfect and obedient life, a life that I couldn't live. He was worthy to go up on the cross and take on my sins and the judgment that I deserved for sinning against God. He was buried. He rose on the third day. He witnessed after that before he ascended into heaven and promised to return. And so my life is revolved around that truth, that reality. I live by trusting in that good news that the Father sent his Son into the world to save me by the power of his Spirit and has called for me to live for him as a servant on this side until he makes all things new.
Man, that's beautifully said. Can you share a little of your testimony and when you decided to make Jesus Lord?
Yeah, well, I think, growing up in the church, growing up around the church, I heard one pastor, I can't remember his name, use this saying once. He said he had a drug problem growing up, and he said
he was
every
drug
Sunday
to church, right?
his parents drug him to church.
That's right.
So that was similar for me. My parents and most notably my mom. She, every weekend, every Sunday, she was dead set on getting me to church, and she was very active in the church. She was singing every week and things of that nature, and so that was my experience watching my mom, watching my dad later on come to faith. Really got an opportunity to see, my mom and my dad have struggles, and My mom prayed for my dad every time he left the house. She never said a negative thing about him, and really got a chance to see the Lord work in that, and see my dad come to faith. And it was just an awesome thing. But for me, even though those were just markers along the journey to show me that the one and only true living God was real. And I think, one of the biggest points in my life was when I was 15 years old, going into my junior year in high school. I was in a car accident. And before I was in a car accident, my mom, as I was heading out to AAU basketball practice, on that Saturday afternoon, she told me, "All right, we're going to church tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I'll go to church tomorrow if I get back in time, from going out later on tonight." But I was really set on not going to church that next day. And, true enough, I didn't go to church that next day because I was in the hospital the next day. And in the car accident, one of my friends that was driving, he unfortunately lost his life. And the rest of us, the other three, we suffered some injuries, but nothing like the loss of a life. But in that moment, that early on, you say that could have been me. Everybody kind of uses that phrase. But later on in my life, once I came to the realities that I was a sinner that needed to be saved by Jesus Christ, I knew that should have been me. Because of my life, the offense that my life was before God. And so that was one of the biggest things there. I now use the saying that he saved me to save me, because if I would have died on that day, I would have been eternally separated from him. And so from his goodness. And so, that was one of those things I always look back on and see the Lord carrying me on the journey.
And you have 5 kids. I have to imagine that maybe you have more. It's 5 kids, right? I saw that online. So I'm guessing that moment when you're 15, you can use that now as a testimony to share with others, especially your kids, because I have a daughter, she's 19 right now. She'll be 20 later on this year. And just the fragility of life, it's often not thought about when you're 15 or when you're 18 or 20. You just kind of think you got all these years left, and there's no urgency in a lot of ways because you feel young and free and vibrant and all those things. But you go through what you went through at 15. I have to imagine that's a great testimony and an opportunity for you to share to other young people, but especially your own kids.
Yeah, you never know. It's a real saying, and it's just like you mentioned there, the urgency that's behind that, right? Making the most of your days, teaching us to number our days, and really appreciate every moment you get to rise in the morning, right? And that's the most important thing there, because God is giving you a new day, right? Yeah. And so, that's definitely a part of how I witness in a sense to those that I encounter. Like you really never know. You think you have many years ahead of you if you're young, but you don't know. My friend that was driving the car, he was 16. And so none of us envisioned being in a car accident on the way back from basketball practice. We were just enjoying a good practice. We were a really good AAU basketball team, and just headed back home, and then there you go. Next thing you know, we're turning over on the highway, and our car ends up upside down in the median. And so you really never know. And so that's something that I really, kind of preach to our youth, and obviously my children every single day.
Yeah. Teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. That's beautiful. When you were growing up and starting to realize that you're pretty good at this sports thing, you're definitely very good at this football thing. Was there ever a battle or a fight, if you will, between the flesh and between God in terms of putting football or sports above your faith?
Yeah. I think, like on this side of it, with sin still everywhere, right, in us, around us, and the evil one himself is always working. There's a war for our worship, right? And so we're either going to be directing that worship towards God or towards something else. And so a lot of times the things that are good in our lives, like, the talent to play football or whatever sport it is, that is going to be, you're going to be tempted to put that in the place of God. And so for sure, that's what I learned on the journey. Proverbs 27:21 says, the crucible is for silver and the furnace is for gold, and a man is tested by his praise. Right. And so I learned to be able to see that, our praise, the compliments, the pats on the back, the walking in the room and people wanting your autograph and standing out at training camp and everyone is screaming for you, all of those things. I learned that is an extreme test, just like a crucible is for the silver and the furnace is for gold, but it's meant to purify you. And how you handle those things is what's most important. Do you receive it with humility, knowing that God made you who you are and gave you what you have to offer? Or do you receive it with pride, or just say, like some people say, I'm him, and
Yeah.
and so that's just one of those things, that I learned along the journey, and learned to see success as a trial, but also just something God uses to purify us, to draw us nearer to Him.
That had to be so hard when you're setting records at NC State, when you're getting drafted into the NFL, and oh, by the way, you're going to the largest city and the largest media market in the world in New York with the Jets. That had to be very difficult to not buy into all the praise and all the pats on the back when you're going to a place like New York and becoming a professional.
Easier said than done, right? And so, when you're receiving all of that, I mean, that is the extreme test, and you especially coming from where I'm coming from, where I came from, inner city of Birmingham, Alabama, and you come from, that, and then you make it into the NFL. There's something there to say I did it, um, you know, and you just kind of really put yourself in a position where you want to be looked to, in a sense, like. If I can do it, I know a lot of people use this saying, if I can do it, anybody can do it, and that's motivation in a sense. But you don't want to put yourself on a pedestal so much to have someone just solely devoted to, following you and everything that you do. It's about Christ and what He has done. And so, those were battles for me, especially when you leave NC State and then you go into a situation with the Jets, and my third year kind of skyrocketed, and having some success there. So a lot of people maybe in your corner and things of that nature telling you need to be doing more to increase your brand, to make people look to you and see who you are, and capitalize on that, build your brand stuff. And so but yeah, that was certainly a test for me.
Jerricho Cotchery is our guest here on Sports Spectrum, longtime NFL wide receiver. So you get to the NFL. I do want to ask you about one specific season. It was 2008. I think that's your fifth year at that point with the Jets. And this new quarterback comes into town, number 4. His name is Brett Favre. And obviously that season didn't end the way that you would want. But still, being around a guy like that, catching passes from a Hall of Famer, I'm just curious what you talk about, the spotlight on New York and the Jets and just you having some success. And I remember those years covering that at ESPN. It was a circus upon circus upon circus during that time. Just wondering what that experience was like for you, not just the circus side of things, but the fact that you got to kind of play with a Hall of Famer and catch some passes from one of the greats.
Yeah, it seems like, the eyes were always on the Jets, and we were always receiving a lot of airtime, no matter where it was. But definitely when Brett Favre came, that was something different. This guy couldn't even go to the restroom by himself without a crowd, following behind him, and so that was a little different there. In the first day of training camp, we're talking 3-4 hours before the first practice, and it is jam packed out there, just people waiting to see number 4 walk out of the building, and so. On one side of it, it was very exciting. But on the other side of it, if you didn't accomplish what you were seeking out to accomplish, you knew someone was going to go. And so that was the thing about that. But it certainly was fun playing with Brett. He brought a lot of light in it. The energy was. I mean, he was always energetic every day, but the atmosphere was really light with him. He always had a lot of fun. We always competed, so I enjoyed that year with him. Wish he could have stayed healthy the entire year, and that would have probably propelled us to where we were trying to go. But I had a blast playing with him.
Yeah, and then the next 2 years you're in the AFC Championship game with the Jets with Mark Sanchez at quarterback, and then you go to Pittsburgh and you're catching passes from another future Hall of Famer, Ben Roethlisberger. But I really want to focus from your Pittsburgh time on Mike Tomlin. You're a coach now. I'm just wondering what it was like to be around what appears to be from the outside and some of the people that I know in that Pittsburgh organization, one of the great leaders you'll ever come across in Coach Tomlin. What was he like to play for?
I mean, he was awesome. I mean, he was everything, that you would want a coach to be. Some coaches are X's and O's. Some coaches just know how to deal with personalities and know how to get guys to Sunday and all of that. But he was everything in one, and he was great with the X's and O's. Everybody that's come across him know that he's a really smart guy. And he studies a lot of film, and so you're going to know your opponent when you play for him. But I also saw him as a master at handling personalities, not just the personalities where you see guys that are screaming and wanting the ball, or just really passionate guys in that sense. But even the quiet guys, even the guys that that aren't as vocal, he knew how to tweak those guys to get them ready for the game. And so I was really impressed. Once I got there, from the time I got there, I think when I got there, 7, 8, 9. Well, he was year 5 as a head coach when I got there, but he was already full steam in how to run an organization. And so, I was really impressed with my time there. Loved him as a coach.
Yeah, and then you moved to Carolina for your last few years, and I just want to take you to your last season. That's a dream season when you look at the Carolina Panthers organization, 15-1. Cam Newton is the MVP, NFC champions, and you play your final game in the Super Bowl 50. Just curious what that time was like for you, playing in that game. Obviously, you didn't win, but it's still a pretty awesome experience just to even make it to the Super Bowl. What was that year like for you, knowing that you were towards the end, but still having a lot of success and being on a team that had a lot of success?
I thoroughly enjoyed that year. I think one of the guys that, some of the same infectious ways that Brett Favre had when I was with the Jets, kept the atmosphere light and all of those things. Cam Newton brought that every day. That's him, his personality. He's been the same guy, since I got there in 2014. And just the way that he went about the work day and just always having fun, but always ready to compete at any given moment. So that year was a special year. Just being able to make it to the Super Bowl in that year, having been to the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row with the Jets, and finally being able to, break that wall down and make it into the Super Bowl, was a special moment. It's a moment that, I'm very grateful for still. In the realm of football, that, what you're seeking is a perishable wreath, but at the same time, you get to see God at work. And so you should never minimize it to the point where you're blinded to what God is doing in you and through you and around you in those settings. And so I was, by God's grace, keenly aware of that. But that year really culminated, was able to culminate from the starting point from the year that preceded it. We finished 2014 on a 4-game winning streak in the regular season, and we started the next year off with 14 straight games. So, doing the numbers, that's 18 straight regular season wins. And the only team that you can put in that category is the New England Patriots, and so, those were exciting times because we figured it out. We scrapped a lot of things at the end of that 14 season and really just turned it over to Cam in a sense where we were running a lot of no huddle stuff, and he was just seeing it the way that he's used to seeing it. And we were able to have a lot of success as a result.
Did you know that was going to be your last game, the Super Bowl?
Yes. When I left Pittsburgh, I wanted to play 2 more years. So I signed my 2-year deal with Carolina, being back home. My parents are getting older. My dad had some health issues. And so just an opportunity for them to see me play those last 2 years in the league. And they had a chance to see, a lot of games in those 2 years. And even when I started coaching with Carolina in 2017, a couple years later. But most importantly, I just wanted them to be able to spend more time with their grandkids because they couldn't hop on flights or get on the road and drive all the way up to New Jersey to see us. Yeah. And so just made that decision to move my family down here to Charlotte. And I'm just grateful that the Lord planted that in my mind to get that done, because my kids, they love their grandparents. My dad is no longer with us, but they had a chance to spend a lot of time with him, and he cherished those moments.
That's great to hear. Speaking of moments, what was time like with God during your NFL career? Chapel, opportunities to be ministered or to minister to other players, and especially as you grew. I'm guessing as you were becoming more of a veteran, maybe you're a little bit more comfortable and outspoken in your faith. But what would you say was time with God and what that was like during your NFL career?
Well, what a lot of people don't know is that on every team, the Lord has planted believers. And so when you come in, you're ready to be received with open arms, and someone is going to be there to disciple you, to help you, be an example for you. That's on every team. And so the Lord is very kind in that. And it's no different for me what I had with New York. And so a day or a week would look like, Bible study on Monday before we start our meetings, because you play your game on Sunday, and you come back in and you have to work out and get ready for, film review and all of those things. But we would have our Bible studies before after our workout, and, go through the day after that. There were also couple studies, depending on, who was going to lead them. But there were a couple studies that can happen either on Fridays or Wednesdays. And then Saturday night is chapel, where some teams have a chaplain, and some teams bring in a local pastor, to come in and give a sermon the night before the game. And then after that, we restarted. But as far as, for me, that part of the routine stayed a part of that. But also, I just wanted to also be a part of a local church and be serving in a local church. And so in the off season, I was ready to get right back into the swing of things with my local church. And so, for any believer, that's what I would encourage him to do. Always be active in what you have, with your team, but also just be a part of a local church and serving there.
Yeah, I could not agree more. The local church has been such a blessing for me in my journey of faith as well. Who are some of the spiritual leaders, some of the guys, whether it was with the Jets or the Steelers or the Panthers, or even now as a coach at Limestone, who has been some of the guys that have really encouraged you over your career?
Well, once I got to the Jets, you were welcomed in by, guys like Chad Pennington, right? And what a gift, coming in as a rookie. You're trying to figure this thing out, and you don't have to meet with an outside source. You can have a veteran on the team to kind of, show you the ropes with everything across the board, what faith looks like, and, just to, how to navigate the professional world and all of those things. And so Chad was definitely one of those guys. And James Dirth. So every team I've gone to, there's been a long snapper that was a believer that was ready to help out in any way possible. And so James Dirth was that guy. with the New York Jets. He was the guy that was, hosting the Bible studies. Ended up going to the church that he was attending when we were in Long Island, and so he was very instrumental. He played a big role in those early years there for me when I was with the Jets, but he was already that before I got there. So he was definitely one of those guys. There are a number of guys that I can name, but I think what started there was with the Jets, and then let me not forget Kevin Mawai. He was one of the guys that paid for our first conference. We have PAO, Professional Athletes Outreach conference that we go to, and he paid for my wife and his wife, and he and his wife paid for my wife's and I first conference there. And so he was a huge blessing to us as well.
I love that. That's so great. And it's funny you mentioned long snappers because we've covered almost every Super Bowl the last 7 or 8 years with Sports Spectrum and been out to the hosting site for the Super Bowl. I can't tell you how many long snappers, including James Winchester with the Chiefs now, who are believers. I don't know if it's that position or what, but there's something about just long snappers, I guess, in the NFL, and so many of them that love the Lord.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, man. It really is. It's a cool thing, because it's a look at how God works, right? It is a position. It's a small role, right? It's a small role on the team, but when it goes wrong.
Yeah, it's vital too.
You don't
want to mess up. That's right.
In our eyes, it's a small role, but it's really vital to getting things done for you as a team. Especially punt team, field goal the other night. Extra point. And so those things are. That's it's an interesting deal. I would love to see how many long snappers in the league are believers. That would be some good research to do there.
I bet you it's a lot. I'll just say that. Yeah. I should probably call a couple of my long snapper friends and ask them because I bet you it's way more than we even realize. So we talked about time as a player. How about now? As a coach, you're at Limestone University with Mike Furrey, head coach. He was on our show last year. Really outspoken man of faith, loves the Lord, was discipled in many ways during his NFL career. What's time with God like now as a coach? Because you do so much pouring into players and even probably your other coaches. You got to make sure your tank's filled as well.
Yeah, what a blessing it is to be able to work for Coach Furrey, and a man like him. How he operates is how I believe that coaching should be done, and sometimes you have those questions to yourself. You ask those questions and you're like, am I tripping? Is this really something that can be done? And he called me up and I got a chance to sit down with him and to see how he thinks and how he runs things. I was like, wow, this is true, and so the biggest blessing there is how he operates. Yes, he's a man of faith. And I think the biggest thing for that being in that setting is the kids know where you're coming from, right? They know where you're coming from. And so it doesn't have to be a gospel presentation every single day, but they just need to know where you're coming from, when you're correcting them, how you're coaching them, how you're pushing them. They know it's coming from a place of faith from him. And that's the same thing for me. And so when I'm around him, I'm encouraged by that and how he's consistent with that same passion, to be able to push people to do good to your neighbor, right? And that's our players and the coaches alike. I'm encouraged by that every day, and so I'm filled in that way. But I also have a strong woman of faith that I've been married to now. It'll be 20 years in May. And so, anytime I'm able to share something with her, she's able to speak into that, and that's a beautiful thing there. And just watching her, we homeschool. And so she's running the show there, doing a phenomenal job with our kids, when I'm away coaching. That's encouraging us too. That's encouraging too. That puts wind in my sails as well. And so just pointing our kids to Christ every single day. When we come home, we still have that family time where we gather around God's word, where we, sing to God and the truth of his word to him and things of that nature. Family worship is a big part of what we do. And so, I'm kind of hemmed in. I always try to put myself in situations where I'm hemmed in on all sides in that sense. So I can serve, as we started here earlier, our King faithfully.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah, it's been a huge blessing to be down at Limestone.
Jerricho, it's been wonderful talking to you. Before we let you go, 5 kids. I know we've talked about your children and kind of ministering to them and praying with them, but I didn't know this until we spoke. All 5 of your kids are adopted. Tell me about adoption and that process and what that's meant to you, and maybe how it's even revealed God to you in a bigger way in walking through this process.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a process that calls for you to trust the Lord. My wife and I, when we were deciding how we were going to grow our family, adoption came up, and my wife was on board with it, and it just took me a little while to come around. But yeah, there you go. At PAO conference, there was a pastor there, Vodi Balcom, who was speaking, and really, just like a lot of people said, they say, it feels like the pastor is speaking directly at you. But as I got to know him over the years, that was just a little quip in his in his sermon that day.
Yeah.
But that was what moved me to, going ahead and putting out my hands and saying, Lord, whatever you would have me do. And I didn't speak about it to my wife. She just kind of found out at the end of the conference when they were doing testimonies, and I just pulled her up, and we were walking up to the mic and ready to declare that, I was ready to trust the Lord in this area. As we were going up there, she was like, well, where are we going?
Yeah.
But she was grateful for it. It does shows you a picture of the gospel message. We are all adopted into the family of God through Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And that's how we become sons of God. And now we are all who believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, truly brothers and sisters in Christ, not partial brothers or anything like that, half siblings. We are full brothers and sisters in Christ when we believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, because we have been adopted into that family, and so into his family. And so I started to understand the gospel more, through the means of adoption that God used to, bring about in our lives. And this is just, I wouldn't have it any other way. My kids are phenomenal. I every moment I get a chance to be with them, and I love it. And so, and my wife, she feels the same way. And so, yeah, that's a part of the story there. Oldest is 16, youngest is 7 now. They'll be turning 17 and 8 in between there. You got two more teenagers and a 10-year-old. And so, it's a full house, a lot of fun, but the joy is there every single day.
That's beautiful, man. That's a great way to end this. And I think people, as they're thinking and hearing about adoption, I know I have an adopted niece, and I watched my brother adopt a little baby girl, and it was just beautiful to see. And that kid is in our family. That's not this sort of side kid that, no, this is my niece. That's his daughter. And it's just beautiful to see. So thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been great to see you, great to connect with you, and look forward to doing it again sometime soon. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it was great to be on.
And many thanks to Jerricho Cotchery for being our guest today on Sports Spectrum. He's awesome, right? What a great story. What a great career he had in the NFL as a player, growing in his faith, and certainly watching his mom be so faithful, his dad come to faith later in life, playing with Brett Favre, playing under Coach Mike Tomlin, playing with Cam Newton, and making it to the Super Bowl in his final game. Imagine your final game in your NFL career is the Super Bowl. That's a pretty good way to go out. And now he's a coach pouring into so many young people with Mike Furrey over at Limestone University. And how about that adoption part of the story at the very end? It's such a beautiful picture of the gospel And a great story there and a great conversation with Jerricho Cotchery, and we appreciate him joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. You can find us at our website, sportspectrum.com. You can find all of our content there, our podcast, devotionals, stories, different articles, testimonials, video content. It's all available at our website, sportspectrum.com. We got some great plans for Sports Spectrum in 2024 for the website, and hopefully soon a brand new app that we can tell you more about. Coming soon here to Sports Spectrum. That's just a little teaser. And of course, whatever app you're listening to this podcast on, soon you might be able to listen right through our Sports Spectrum app. But for now, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, whether it's Amazon, wherever it might be, iHeart, we just want to say thank you for tuning in, but make sure you click that subscribe and that follow button. That way you don't miss any more future episodes of Sports Spectrum's podcast. So I listen a lot on Spotify. I click that follow button, and every single time a new show or a new conversation is released, it shows up right there, and then I can just click play and enjoy the next podcast. So definitely click that subscribe button, that follow button. That way you don't miss any more conversations like today's with Jerricho Cotchery. And of course, we appreciate you tuning in. We hope you'll join us next time for another conversation right here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.